Toronto says nearly all of its recreation centers and all 39 city-operated childcare centers will close if workers strike next month. We're going to hear from both sides coming up.
Plus, reaction to the provincial election results. Doug Ford's PCs. When a third majority government and the NDP retains official opposition status, the Liberals, they win enough seats to regain official party status.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has left the White House without signaling if a critical minerals deal that U.S. President Trump had been demanding is going ahead.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Beatrice Faisman.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Live at 5. Details from the city today of the impact of a potential strike or lockout of inside city workers that could begin in just over a week.
CP24's Sija Liu joins us now live with the latest on negotiations, a press conference happening just within the last half hour with QP. Sija, so what did they say?
Lena, Beatrice, they said the two sides are still far apart when it comes to negotiations. And I'm standing in front of Wellesley Community Center, one of the community centers that will shut down next Saturday if a deal is not reached between QP Local 79 and the city. They represent about 30,000 inside city workers that work in a range of services from recreation centers to the 311 call center, long-term care homes. The main sticking point here has been better wages. They want the city to pay them more, and they want to eliminate minimum wage in the city of Toronto. Now, if the two sides don't reach an agreement, workers could walk off the job next Saturday, March 8th. And that means March break camps will be shut down. All recreation centers will be shut down. But when it comes to what will stay open, the city says long-term care homes, emergency services, winter maintenance won't be impacted. Here's more from the city manager, Paul Johnson, on the services that will be impacted.
City of Toronto operates 39 childcare centres, all of which would be closed in the event of a work stoppage. Private homes through the Toronto Home Childcare Services would not be affected, but obviously our city-operated childcare facilities are closed. Specialized workers, ratios, and all the rest simply do not allow us to continue those. And I think families need to know that well in advance as we continue to work towards a deal.
Throughout the day, the workers with the union held informational pickets, handing out these pamphlets to the public to get their message heard. They held a press conference about 30 minutes ago. Take a listen to what they had to say.
We don't want to strike. We want to continue to do the work that we love, and we want to continue to care and serve the people of Toronto. If we are unable to do that, it is because the city has chosen that path forward. And I would suggest that the parents who are concerned write to their counselors, call City Hall and let them know, give these workers a fair contract so that there does not need to be job action.
The city manager says his proposal is a 15% wage increase for both at the bargaining table. And Lena, Beatrice, their next meeting will be on Monday.
Sija Liu reporting live for us this hour. Thanks so much for this, Sija. Let's check on the commute now with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa. Hey there, Aj.
Oh, hey there, Lena. Yeah, Lena, it has been quite the busy afternoon and still running into quite a few problems. So we'll start with these issues I've been watching on the northbound 427 happening through Dundas in the Express. Find that left lane and shoulder blocked up following this collision. From this point, the delays actually continue on the northbound 427 on the approach to Airport Road. That is where we have this vehicle fire. Fire's long out. It was a truck that was on fire. It was the two right lanes that are blocked. The two right lanes remain off limits. Gardner, pretty busy as you make your way out of the downtown core. My cameras are just going out intermittently, but it's busy as you head through. And you know what? There is one other issue, and my camera went out, so I'll just mention it. So eastbound to 401 in the collectors through Weston Road, it is a stall that does have the right lane blocked. And a reminder, if your travels take you towards Brampton, Bramalea closed between Countryside all the way over to Sandalwood. It's for a collision investigation. I'll send it back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Police are searching for a suspect in a stabbing near Church and Wellesley.
They were called here just after 9 a.m. for reports that a person had been stabbed. That person taken to hospital with serious injuries. Police tell CP24 they arrested one man nearby and they're continuing to search for another man. The remaining suspect was last seen wearing a red, black, and blue jacket with black pants. Church Street Junior Public School had been under a hold and secure order that has since been lifted.
A man in his 20s is in hospital with serious injuries after a crash on a QEW off-ramp in Mississauga. Chopper 24 over the scene at Dixie and QEW this morning. You can see the car lying on its roof. Peel paramedics say they were called here just before 6:30 this morning. A man in his 20s was rushed to a trauma center with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Anyone with dash camera footage is asked to contact Mississauga OPP.
Dozens of local businesses have filed a lawsuit against the city of Toronto, claiming the bike lanes on Bloor were implemented recklessly and they're impacting them as well.
CP24's Steve Ryan joins us now live with the details. Steve, you just spoke with the person who's launching the lawsuits. What are the key arguments here?
Well, there are a lot of concerns, Beatrice and Lena. There are a lot of concerns from local business owners when it comes to affecting their businesses, traffic congestion, emergency vehicles getting by on Bloor Street West here in Etobicoke. So all of that conversation has now turned to action, and over 40 local businesses are now suing the city and others as a result of the decision being made to put these bike lanes in. Now, joining me is Cody McCrae. Cody, what's your foundation again?
Yeah, we're Balance on Bloor. We're a local not-for-profit that argues for, better infrastructure for cyclists that makes sense, for a more holistic approach.
And tell me about the lawsuit.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's not just against the city of Toronto, it's against our local councillor, Amber Morley, and the GM of Transportation Services, Barbara Gray, because these lanes have just been an unmitigated disaster. They're empty all the time. There's nobody really in them. And the damage the city has inflicted by installing these without giving a second thought to any of these business owners has just been awful. There's numerous people in the community, whether it be senior citizens, people with disabilities, kids that can't play on side streets anymore from cars racing down, but people with disabilities who can't access businesses properly anymore, that have problems getting over the curbs. The city, they can't even clear snow properly, let alone, let them be in charge of implementing bike lanes. It's just been an uphill battle since day one. They've neglected us for over a year. They've dismissed our concerns, and they say that everything's fine. They've put up a consultation meeting. Consultation meeting up at Islington and Steeles. And then, once we had people show up there, they canceled the next one due to unforeseen circumstances. So the whole thing has just been a disaster, quite frankly.
And how has it impacted local businesses from what you've been hearing?
Yeah, loads of businesses are suffering. Everybody here is down, unfortunately. They've been down because they've been neglected and ignored for over a year. Our local councillor, Amber Morley, has just dismissed their concerns, and she thinks that everything is fine, and it's not fine. The city didn't even consult these guys properly before it actually got implemented. They just did it after the fact and said, "Hey, is this okay? We've taken away your loading zones. We've taken away your parking spaces. Is that okay?" It's not okay.
Now, very quickly, what about those that say you're just anti-cyclists? What's your response to that?
Yeah, I'm a cyclist myself. So majority of the people that are part of Balance on Bloor, we are cyclists. We support safe cycling infrastructure when it's done properly. So we do support bike lanes, and for sure, we absolutely support bike lanes, but they need to be done properly. This has just been, as I've mentioned, it's just been an unmitigated disaster the entire time.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for that. Cody McCrae, I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Steve Ryan reporting live this afternoon. Steve, thanks for this.
There is a significant subway closure downtown to tell you about this weekend.
There'll be no service between Bloor Yonge and Osgood stations both Saturday and Sunday for track work. Service on this stretch has ended at 11 o'clock each night this week for maintenance. Shuttle buses will be running.
It's 5:09, 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Coming up, unofficial results indicate recounts will be needed in 2 ridings. We're going to have reaction to last night's provincial election. Stay with us. Unofficial results from the election indicate recounts will be needed in 2 ridings because the vote there was so close.
The margins of victory in Mississauga, Erin Mills, and Mushkoguk, James Bay were fewer than 25 votes. Elections Ontario says Official results will be tabulated over the next few days. Voter turnout was just over 45%, which was up about 1% from 2022, which, by the way, was a record low for an Ontario election.
And the Progressive Conservatives captured a third straight majority government, winning 80 seats back in 2022. They had won 83. The NDP at 27 remained the official opposition, despite trailing in all of the public opinion polls. The Liberals, this was an interesting storyline. They regained official party status with 14 seats, but they weren't able to make any major breakthroughs, while the Greens kept their 2 seats, and there is 1 independent. The Greens were not able to pick up Parry Sound Muskoka as they had hoped to. We talked to voters about what they think today.
Donald Trump's going to be in for 4 years. I think it was a good time to call an election, get a good 4-year mandate, and I'm fine with that too.
I don't like how it turned out as a whole. I would have liked to see a different premier or a minority government because Ford can probably do whatever he chooses to do with a majority, no checks and balances.
Of course, lots of reaction pouring in today. Toronto's Mayor Olivia Chow, she's congratulating Doug Ford on his election win.
I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Premier Destiny Ford, and I look forward to working with him again, where we would build more housing faster, make life more affordable, feed more kids, and get Toronto moving by investing in public transit, and then especially working together to defend and to protect Toronto against this senseless trade war.
And CTV's political commentator Scott Reid joined us live this morning to talk about Bonnie Crombie's setback at the polls. She did not win in the riding of Mississauga East Cooksville.
I think her position is probably secure, at least for the near term as leader, if for no other reason than I think, A, the party is grateful to her for putting them back into the race, and B, I don't know that there's somebody that's itching to take her job. I don't know that there's an obvious alternative or rival. I don't know that there's an organized effort to say, well, now that she's vulnerable, let's go in for the kill. You just don't see that. So I think that if Crombie wants a job, she'll be able to hold the job. And then, as you say, how is she going to make the most of the job when she's not in the legislature on a daily basis? Well, at least now she's going to have new resources as an official party.
And Neil Hetherington, the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank, joined us earlier to share his thoughts on the results.
Over the last number of years, the policy has been, how do we make sure from a social perspective that more and more people get jobs? And more than 1 million jobs were created since 2018. And that's something to celebrate. But what we also need to realize is that more than 500,000 Ontarians now turn to a food bank. That is an increase of 500,000 to 1 million Ontarians since just 2022. So you've got 500,000 new folks never walked through a food bank ever before, having to come and rely on food charity, while at the same time we created 1 million jobs. So there's some questions there.
Nearly half of food bank clients have someone in their household who is employed.
It's 5:15, sitting at 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Two world leaders get into a heated exchange during a White House meeting. Today we'll have reaction to Trump and Zelensky and catch you up with what happened in the Oval Office. Stay with us.
That wasn't with me. That wasn't with me. That was with it.
Welcome back. An extraordinary scene at the White House today as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump engaged in a shocking verbal brawl. And the video is shocking.
Yeah, it was something to watch for sure. Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya with the very latest and some analysis. Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, this is something you don't see every day, and that's part of the reason why it's garnering so much attention. This was when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was visiting the White House, hoping to sign a critical minerals deal with the United States. And then really things started to boil over in the Oval Office while the two were having a bit of an exchange. Actually, it was three of them. Vice President J.D. Vance was also there, U.S. President Donald Trump, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We'll let you hear a little bit of that exchange.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Pretty shocking to see. For more on this, I want to bring UFT professor Matthew Light with some analysis. Professor, it's good to have you. Thanks for taking the time. I guess, first of all, what do you make of seeing something like this? You don't see this every day.
No, you certainly don't. I think just as a sort of exchange, it's shocking simply in the behavior of Trump and Vance as the U.S. president and vice president in the Oval Office. Previous presidents have been more restrained in meetings with foreign heads of state. Such meetings are often broadcast like that as a way of demonstrating common ground, and clearly that was not their agenda today.
We know that the U.S. has been engaging in some talks with Russia when it comes to potentially ending this war. What does an exchange like today, how detrimental is that really for Ukraine's relations with the U.S.?
Well, it's clearly not a good thing. Having seen more or less the full exchange, not just the clip that you just aired for your viewers, I had the sense that the meeting began relatively amicably and then went off the rails. It's unclear, and I think this could be investigated a bit further, whether Trump and Vance meant to pounce on Zelensky like that, or whether they simply didn't like what he had to say and decided that they wanted to publicly humiliate him in front of the world. Either way, it's absolutely disastrous. There's clearly some bad blood there, and Trump is no friend of Zelensky, and as his remarks make clear, prefers to blame Ukraine, which is rather hard to take seriously for Russia's aggression against it.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking to see. And the two sides have since both released some statements. President Zelensky issued a statement thanking the U.S. for everything it's done for the Ukraine. And then Donald Trump also issued a statement saying that he wants peace, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, and that when President Zelensky is ready to also engage in peace talks, he's welcome to return to the White House. What do you make of these kind of statements coming out after the fact?
Well, I read them both. Zelensky's looks like damage limitation in an attempt to restore civility. Trump's is completely uncompromising and continues the sort of bullying and berating of Zelensky that he began in front of the cameras. It doesn't really seem to offer much of a way forward for their dialogue, which is the most disturbing aspect of the whole thing. I'm afraid it only reinforces the message that Trump really would prefer to deal with Russia. Russia is his preferred partner, and any kind of what he would regard as concessions, what others might simply regard as fair dealing with Ukraine, really grates on him and is very hard for him to take.
Okay, Professor Matthew Light, we'll have to leave it there, but I do appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So there you go, Beatrice and Lena. Needless to say, Zelensky left the White House shortly after that. The news conference did not happen. The critical minerals deal has not been signed. And we're getting reaction internationally, including from Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who had said that all allies need to stand with Ukraine. Back to you.
What a shocking moment. Lindsay Biscaya all over that. Thanks so much, Lindsay. We'll take you to the Vatican now. Another setback for Pope Francis as he battles double pneumonia.
The Vatican saying the 88-year-old pontiff suffered a bronchial spasm today that resulted in him breathing in vomit that required non-invasive mechanical ventilation. The Pope responded well to the treatment and remained conscious and alert at all times. The development comes after 2 straight days of improvements in his condition. Today's incident has caused a sudden worsening of the respiratory picture. Doctors are keeping his prognosis guarded.
Well, as the investigation into the deaths of Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their dogs continues, we are learning more about the bizarre circumstances around their passings.
According to a search warrant, they had been dead for some time when a maintenance worker discovered their bodies. Here is part of the recording of the 911 call made by that worker.
911, what is it? It's emergency.
Hello, my name is I'm the caretaker for Santa Fe Summit up here about past 10,000 ways. I think we just found one deceased person inside a house. What's the address here?
There's no address.
There's no address. I'm going to wait for you at the gate.
Police say Hackman was found dead Wednesday in an entryway, and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, was found in a bathroom next to a space heater. There was an open prescription bottle and pills scattered on the countertop near her. Authorities have not disclosed how the couple died.
And the Santa Fe sheriff had an update on this investigation and was asked whether carbon monoxide could have caused the couple's deaths.
It's, I wouldn't say odd, but it's not normal to find two people deceased in a residence. That's concerning. And then there was also a dog that was in a kennel that was also found deceased. We don't know the cause of that, obviously. But, on our experience and working on cases like this, that is a possibility. Because of that, we called in the fire department, we called in P&M to go through the house, do some testing to figure out if it was even safe for our officers to go in and process the scene and execute the warrant. They stated that it was safe. I don't have the details of exactly what they located or what they didn't locate. It was determined that it was safe.
And the caretaker who found the body says he last saw that couple about 2 weeks ago.
It's 5:25, sitting at 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. The WWE is returning to Toronto for the first time in more than 2 decades. Trish Stratus talks to CP24 after the break. The WWE is returning to Toronto for the first time in more than 2 decades for a pay-per-view. Wrestling legend Trish Stratus, who just happens to be from the GTA, is among the big names competing in SmackDown tonight. The 15th Elimination Chamber event will happen tomorrow at Rogers Centre. She sat down with our Gian Lee this morning to talk about her comeback and the impact her career has had on the next generation of female wrestlers.
I went back 2 years ago and I worked with the generation that talked about the work we did as the females in my generation, that they were inspired by our work. People ask me, did you always know you wanted to be a wrestler? And I say, I no way. Because it wasn't a possibility. Mm-hmm. There wasn't anything for me on TV to say, oh, I can do that, right? And so once we did the work, and I'm saying us, the girls back in the 2000s, the early 2000s, we were doing our work and establishing that, hey, we're going to knock down the preconceived notion of what a female can do in the ring. Yeah. You may not expect this from us, but we can go like the guys can go. But it took us time. We had to go, we had to prove ourselves, we had to do it. And over the, few years, we did get that space. We had the visibility that the guys had and things like that.
John Cena and The Rock will also be in town for this weekend's events.
Yeah, it's a good time. Fun show for sure. It is 5:29. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News Live at 5. The union representing 30,000 city workers is holding information pickets today. We'll get an update on both sides of the status of bargaining negotiations coming up. Toronto says nearly all of its recreation centers and all 39 city-operated childcare centers will close if workers strike next week. We'll hear from both sides coming up.
And we have reaction to the provincial election results. Doug Ford's PCs win a third majority government, the NDP retaining official opposition party status, and the Liberals win enough seats to regain official party status. But Bonnie Crombie is not able to gain a seat in the legislature.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has left the White House without signing a critical minerals deal that U.S. President Donald Trump has been demanding.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Ladefat.
And I'm Beatrice Faisman. Welcome to Live at 5. Well, dozens of local businesses, they've filed a lawsuit against the City of Toronto, claiming the bike lanes on Bloor were recklessly implemented and negatively impacting businesses there.
CP24 Steve Ryan joins us live with the very latest reaction. Steve.
Yeah, Lena, there's been a lot of talk by members of the local community here off of Bloor Street West in Etobicoke, including business owners as well, and they've had concerns since these bike lanes have been put in. Many of them are complaining about the lack of business. They're saying that these bike lanes are hindering their businesses. Their businesses are suffering as a result. The emergency vehicles, they say, sometimes can get trapped in between lanes here because there's no room to move. And they say it's dangerous for kids playing on the side streets as well, given the fact that people are cutting through these side streets as a result of not wanting to be in congested traffic here on Bloor Street West. Now, I did speak with a local member of this community just a short time ago and got reaction from him. And here's some of what he told me. Let's have a listen.
It's literally about the damage that's been inflicted on this community. They've just doubled down on their ideologies, pushing it through, thinking that it was fine, when in reality it hasn't been fine. We have numerous people in this community that are suffering now because of the damages that they've inflicted upon us, whether it be senior citizens with disabilities, whether it be children on side streets who can't play outside anymore because of cars rushing down. The lanes sit empty, as you can see here, all the time. Like the city can't even clear snow properly. How are we expected to trust them on, implementing proper bike lanes?
There goes the first cyclist that we saw going past this location within the last 2 hours. So that lawsuit was filed by 40 members of this local community. It's filed with the Superior Court downtown, and it is suing, among other people, the city of Toronto. Let's send it back to the desk.
Right. Steve, thanks so much for this. Well, police are searching for a suspect in a stabbing near church in Wellesley tonight.
Police were called there just after 9 o'clock this morning for reports that one person had been stabbed. He was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Chopper 24 was over the scene earlier today. Police telling us they arrested one man nearby, and they're continuing to search for another man. The remaining suspect was last seen wearing a black, red, and blue jacket with black pants. Church Street Junior Public School had been placed under a hold and secure order. That has since been lifted.
A man in his 20s is in hospital after with serious injuries, after a crash on a QEW off-ramp in Mississauga.
Chopper 24 was over the scene at Dixie and QEW this morning. You can see the car lying on its roof. Peel paramedics say they were called here just before 6:30 this morning. A man in his 20s was rushed to a trauma center with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Anyone with dash camera footage is asked to contact Mississauga OPP.
Okay, it's 5:35, 2 degrees. Let's get a check on the evening commute with our traffic specialist, Adjoa Ayabwa. Tell me about the problem areas you're looking at tonight, Aj.
Yeah, we got a few of them, Lena. Things are getting a little bit better, though. If you're on the northbound 427, still pretty slow off the 401 to approaching Airport Road. It's because of this cleanup of a truck fire. Fire's out now. Just the right lane and shoulder is blocked. They managed to reopen a center lane, so that's a sign that things might be improving. Headed towards the 401 if you're on the eastbound side, eastbound 401 in the express through Weston. Find the right lane blocked. This is following a stall. Now, because of this problem and a little bit of light rain that's coming down, traffic is very slow and backed up now from before the 410. And your only other issue on the major routes is on the Niagara-bound lanes of the QEW. This is right as you make your way through Trafalgar. It looks like it's off to the side, but the end of the on-ramp from Trafalgar, that right lane is still occupied. A reminder, in Brampton, Bramalea, still closed between Sandalwood all the way over to Countryside. That is for a collision investigation and also a collision on Steeles and Old Weston. I'll send it back to you both.
Adjoa, thanks for this. There's a significant subway closure downtown this weekend.
Yeah, there will be no service between Bloor, Yonge, and Osgood stations both Saturday and Sunday. This is because of track work. Services on this stretch has ended at 11 o'clock each night this week for maintenance, and shuttle buses will be running instead.
Details from the city today on the impact of a potential strike or lockout inside workers that could begin in just over a week.
CP24's Sija Liu joins us live with the latest on these negotiations. Sija.
Lena, Beatrice, recreation centers like the Wellesley Community Center could be closed next Saturday if 30,000 inside workers with the city walk off the job. We got an update from the city today and the union. Both sides say they are far apart on negotiations. The main sticking point has been wages. The union says they want better wages. They want to eliminate minimum wage in the city of Toronto. The city says they are offering a 15% increase over 4 years and that this deal is in line with some of the deals they've reached with other unions. Now, we're talking about 30,000 workers represented by QP Local 79. They work in a bunch of sectors such as 311, recreation centers, court services. That means all city-run childcare centers, daycares, including March break camps, would shut down if these workers go on strike. The city says things that will still operate as normal include ambulance, emergency services, long-term care homes, as well as winter maintenance. Here's the latest from the city manager, Paul Johnson.
Our local 79 members run programming at recreation centers. And if there is a labor disruption, nearly all of the city's recreation centers will be closed and recreation programming canceled. And that includes, because of the timing of this, potentially the March break camps and activities that are city-run or held in city facilities.
And throughout the day, workers with the union have been holding informational pickets across the city, passing flyers to let the public know some of their main concerns. Take a listen to what they had to say today.
We are very far apart when it comes to the main issues, which is wages. And let's just be clear, we're not talking about wages in isolation of recruitment and retention. So when you can't recruit and retain workers, there's a reason for that. The reason for that is you're not paying them enough. The workplace is not a place that is attractive for workers. So people are actually leaving the city of Toronto and going and working in other municipalities, smaller municipalities, by the way, who are not as rich as the city of Toronto, who are paying workers more and creating better, healthier work environments.
The city says if the strike does happen, refunds will be issued for anyone who paid for March break camps or have their kids in childcare. In the meantime, there are some city festivals that are already being postponed in the event of this possible strike. Celebrate Toronto was supposed to happen next Saturday. It's been pushed back the week after. And Lena, Beatrice, both sides will be meeting again on Monday.
All right, that's Sija Liu reporting live tonight. Sija, thanks for this. It's 5:39, sitting at 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Unofficial results indicate recounts will be needed in 2 ridings. We'll have reaction to the next provincial election results coming up.
Welcome back. Unofficial results from the election indicate recounts will be needed in 2 ridings because the vote was so close.
The margins of victory in Mississauga, Erin Mills, and
Mishkegwak, James Bay were fewer than 25 votes.
Elections Ontario says the official results will be tabulated over the next few days. Voter turnout was just over 45%, which was up about 1% from 2022, which marked a record low for an Ontario election. The Progressive Conservatives captured a 3rd straight majority government, winning 80 seats. The NDP, at 27 seats, remain the official opposition. The Liberals did regain official party status with 14 seats, but party leader Bonnie Crombie did not secure a seat in the legislature. She lost out in Mississauga, East Cooksville. The Greens, they kept their 2 seats, and there's 1 independent. Here's what some voters that we spoke to are saying today.
I'd like to see it more balanced. I'd like to see more reflection of recognition of some of the failure to achieve some of his initial mandate, and some of the deals that were going on in the Green Belt and things like that were a bit underhanded.
He got the majority. We are happy. Now he's going to do some job with the USA.
And Mayor Olivia Chow congratulated Doug Ford on his 3rd victory.
I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Premier Designate Ford, and I look forward to working with him again, where we would build more housing faster, make life more affordable, feed more kids, and get Toronto moving by investing in public transit, and then especially working together to defend and to protect Toronto against this senseless trade war.
CTV political commentator joined us earlier this morning here on CP24 to talk about what's next for Premier Ford after his big win.
One of the things I'll be watching for is, does the premier move in light of new tariffs that are supposed to come down next week from the United States? Does he move to recall the legislature? Does he ask for a Team Ontario approach? That was a phrase he used last night in reference to his opposition opponents. Does he try to bring the legislature together, put in place some kind of protection package? Say, these are the amounts of money we're going to spend. We're going to have a support package for industry and for workers. We're going to try to protect them from the vagaries, the caprice, and the malice of Donald Trump. I'll be watching to see what he does. He asked for this mandate. He claimed the mandate last night. Now what's he going to do with the mandate?
And Ontario food banks have long been calling for more investments in affordable housing as hunger reaches unprecedented levels.
Last year, there were 3.75 million visits to the Daily Bread Food Bank. That's a 25% jump from the previous year and more than 4.5 times pre-pandemic levels. More than 1 in 10 Torontonians rely on food banks. More than half of clients say cost of living is the main reason for visiting.
And Neil Hetherington, the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank, joined us live to talk about the changes that need to be made, especially for those on Ontario Works and ODSP.
They receive $722 a month. Somebody on disability receives $1,300 per month. That is deep poverty. The poverty line in Ontario is around $2,400. They are, some $1,000 below the poverty line every single month. So the Conservatives have said, listen, we're going to continue to adjust disability by inflation. That is a commitment that few governments have done before. We'll celebrate that. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that they are so underwater already that there is some catching up to be done. This goes back to Mike Harris cuts of 23% to social assistance rates back in the 90s.
Nearly half of food bank clients have someone in their household who is employed.
It's 5:46, 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Pope Francis has had a setback in his recovery from double pneumonia. We're going to have an update on the health of the pontiff coming up next.
An extraordinary scene at the White House today as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and U.S. President Donald Trump engaged in a shocking verbal brawl.
Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya with the very latest. What are the political implications of that heated situation, Lindsay?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we're all still trying to figure out. It sounds as though from the statements issued by at least President Volodymyr Zelenskyy after this happened, that he's trying to patch things over to make sure that the Ukraine and the U.S. are still on the same side. But it's pretty shocking what we saw today in the Oval Office. And this was in front of cameras. There was a bit of a heated exchange. It did not get to a shouting match, but it almost did. There was quite an exchange between U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, U.S. President Donald Trump, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who would actually come down to meet with Donald Trump and potentially sign a critical minerals deal between Ukraine and the U.S. But then things really started to go south with Donald Trump basically telling Zelenskyy that he lacked gratitude for what the U.S. had done for Ukraine. And it sounded as though he was almost blaming him, saying that Zelenskyy is about to start World War III. Here's a little bit more, kind of the juicier parts of that exchange today.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire?
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
So a pretty tense exchange there, not something you see very often. And of course, people around the world reeling at this point, different governments, including the Canadian government. We have word from Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who spoke today in response to what happened here, saying that everyone really needs to remain allies in the face of this war that Ukraine is having against Russia. Here's more from Minister Joly.
Clearly, the Russians are noting the interaction that happened today. And so our goal is to make sure that we can continue to support Ukrainians and that we can keep very strong G7 unity amidst all this unpredictability and sometimes even chaos.
As I mentioned, Lena and Beatrice, President Zelenskyy has issued a statement that appears to be smoothing things over, thanking the U.S. for everything it's done for Ukraine. Donald Trump also released a statement today, and it wasn't quite the same tone. He more or less said that he wants peace and that Zelenskyy is welcome back to the White House when he also wants peace. And once again, we heard this aspect from Donald Trump saying that President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Ukraine was disrespecting America. And we've heard that when he talks about Canada as well, that the U.S. has been disrespected quite a bit. We've heard that many times from Donald Trump. That is also what he said in his statement today. So we'll have to wait and see whether the two sides can kind of smooth things over, patch things up. Back to you.
All right, Lindsay Biscay reporting live from our newsroom. Lindsay, thanks for this. Another setback for Pope Francis as he battles double pneumonia.
The Vatican says the 88-year-old pontiff suffered a bronchial spasm today that resulted in him breathing in vomit. That required non-invasive mechanical ventilation. The pontiff responded well to the treatment and remained conscious and alert at all times. This development comes after 2 straight days of improvements in his condition. Today's incident has caused a sudden worsening of the respiratory picture. Doctors are still keeping his prognosis guarded.
Skype will soon be a thing of the past.
Microsoft announcing today it is shutting down the calling and messaging service as of May 5th. This brings back so many memories. It's asking Skype users to switch to Teams instead. Skype's popularity soared in the 2000s by allowing people to talk for free, but really struggled in the mobile era and couldn't gain much traction during the pandemic. Users will be able to use their Skype credentials to log into Teams, and contacts and chats will automatically transfer over. It's the end of an era.
It is. My mom's going to be really upset about that. That's how she keeps in touch with all the family members around the world. We'll get you sorted, Mom. Don't worry. Let's get to some other news. Data showing a large number of federal public servants aren't following Ottawa's work in the office rule.
The remote work mandate requires all staff employed under the Treasury Board to work on site a minimum of 3 days a week. The Canadian Press asked for compliance rates from a number of federal departments, including the 3 with the largest workforces, the Department of National Defense, the CRA, and Employment and Social Development. Of those 3, Defense, which employs about 29,000 people, saw the lowest rate of compliance, with just 31% and 60% of employees following the mandate in December and January, respectively.
Muslims around the world are uniting in a ritual of daily fasting from dawn to sunset as the Islamic holy month of Ramadan begins.
For Muslims, it's a time of worship, reflection, charity, and good deeds. It often brings families and friends together in festive gatherings around meals to break their fast. In Indonesia, where 90% of the 282 million people are Muslim, Ramadan is a sacred and highly anticipated time, not only as a month of spiritual reflection, but also as a period of increased consumer spending.
5:55, sitting at 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. The biggest night in Hollywood coming up this weekend. We'll preview the 97th Academy Awards after the break.
The 97th Annual Academy Awards are going to be handed out this Sunday.
The gala event comes just weeks after parts of LA were just absolutely devastated by wildfires. And of course, the fires will be addressed during the show, both directly and in its themes, and viewers will also be able to make donations. This year, the original song nominees won't be performed, but there will be plenty of music, including a tribute to Quincy Jones and an ensemble performance of the songs from Wicked.
Conan O'Brien sat down with E-Talk's Tracy Melchior and spoke about the Canadian impact on show business.
There's something in the water in Canada, and I love to connect with different cultures. I know you guys are our neighbors. You're just right across the border, but you do have your own unique culture, and you've gifted America with so much. You've given us so many funny people.
A lot of Canadian talent. Yeah. Film critic Richard Krause, also a Canadian talent, gave us a rundown of his picks for some of the biggest awards at the Oscars.
I think it's a tight race between Enora and The Brutalist for Best Picture, but I think it's going to be Enora. That's where my heart lies on that one. But that one could be a surprise, and surprises on Oscar night are always interesting.